fall. It's gonna be a cold, white Christmas in St. Paul.
Well, it's still a cold white Christmas. Here we are, video number 2. Wanted to talk a little bit about the stock market. So I guess this is a special second video. So the market is now down pretty close to 30%. The 1095 number that I've been working with was simply 30% from the closing high. That's it. As simple as that, 1095. If that had worked out to 1089 or 1101, then that would have been the prediction. Hopefully, if you've been reading my stuff all along, you gleaned that I don't really care about being right about that sort of thing. Really, the intention is more about trying to miss a chunk of down a lot. It's as simple as that. As I very funnily like to do, or humorously, try to create this effect to some degree, just going down less, whatever that might be. That's all I'm trying to do. So, I put a label on it. I still believe it can be a normal bear market, and if that turns out to be wrong, okay, it will turn out to be wrong. The portfolio is doing what it needs to do, and obviously, as time goes on, I can make some tactical decisions. In addition to some of the other things, I sold a couple of stocks out that I think I disclosed in a prior video. A couple of across-the-board names and a little bit of trimming here and there that have made me a little more defensive, and then selling out the double short, or half of it, raised the cash portion, but at the same time, sitting on a lot of cash and a lot of double short. The double short has grown quite a bit since I think I was in the neighborhood of 5%, sold it down to about 2.5% maybe, and now it's back up close to 3%. So you kind of get the idea here. If the market keeps going, that gets bigger and bigger. But the reason, I don't know how well I articulated it in the post about selling it, but the risk here of good news causing a knee-jerk reaction, I think is pretty high, even if it has no fundamental legs. And let's face it, I don't know. The line between fundamentals and fear is pretty blurred right now. So nothing should be surprising, even if it doesn't happen. Got a couple of. Actually, one more thing. So back to 1095, as far as being right or being wrong, more so in Seeking Alpha, a couple of people like, how can you call this normal, yada, 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 and, it's normal until it isn't, is really how I feel. So in thinking 1095, if, let's just say, the bottom turns out to be 1080, 15 points, it'd be 31% from the peak. Is that wrong? Some would say yes, and I think most would say no, not really that wrong. So how far away from that 1095 do I start to be wrong? I'm not entirely sure, and hopefully that doesn't matter to you a whole lot, but in terms of where I'm coming from, not worried about being right or wrong. If it goes down to 900 on the S&P, certainly 1095 will be wrong. If it goes to 1,000, if that's the low, that's probably wrong, but I wouldn't view that as the end of the world either. So hopefully you get some idea of where I'm trying to come from on that, is focusing more on this than being right. Some comments came in questioning one person, his friend's father was down 25%, about to retire or close to it, and then something about being down 25%. Does the advisor have him allocated incorrectly? No real way to know. None of us has access to the account. A similar thing, someone's mom down, I think it was the same 25%, down 25% with a 60-40 allocation. Okay, so this, I think, harkens back to some top-down stuff, and then there's some smaller picture things. Okay, top-down, what matters is some sort of defensive position, probably more so than the allocation. The way this is shaken out, there are parts of the fixed income market, parts that have touched the portfolios I manage specifically would be convertible bonds. I have one or a couple of different closed-end funds in client accounts. Both have been crushed. Preferred stocks have been hit very hard. It might be fair to call them having been crushed. There are corporate bonds. Look under the hood of some bond ETFs, and you'll see all sorts of things at 70 and 80 cents on the dollar. There's a lot of the fixed income market that just is broken, I think is how I described it. Certainly, dislocations galore. So that someone could be down that much in a diversified portfolio, that makes sense to me. It may be uncomfortable, but the thing that I think is missing is not a poor target allocation, but more a lack of defensive action. So if you're ever going to hire someone, I guess you need to ask them, okay, what's your idea of defense and how do you take it? To the extent that you care about that. The people who left comments, someone cares. The comment was left. There seems to be a degree or two of separation in the comments, but you get the idea. So defense apparently now after the fact matters. So there was, not to be an asshole, but there was an element of lack of planning one way or another, either on the advisor's part or maybe a lack of know thyself, or not knowing enough to ask the question about defense. Who knows? But to me, this speaks to top-down, something's wrong, reduce exposure. And then from there, you either reduce exposure in a way that ends up being efficient or not. I'd like to think I've done it in a way that's efficient, but who the hell knows? Some may say not. But that's kind of how I view that. And I'll tell you, one cool thing about going to these conferences, you get to meet people, and there's a lot of them that don't, investment advisors that do not try to take defensive action. That's pretty important to know if you're now familiar with the concept. That doesn't make them wrong, but it creates some sort of aspect of knowing what to expect. If the market goes down a lot, I'm going to go down with it. And you need to reconcile that before it happens, not wake up one day, I'm down 30%, now what do I do? Know thyself, know what your manager's going to do, and make sure it fits. I guess this is the type of thing of being comfortable with what it is the person you hire is going to do. That's one of the reasons why, people still get nervous, but, I told them long ago, long before things ever got ugly, this is what we're going to do, this is why we're going to do it. We think it'll work, but you're still going to go down some. And I'm shocked that has actually worked out. The fact that I can do it means anyone can, because it's pretty simple stuff. I got this out of a magazine. Hello! One last thing with regard to conferences. I'm going to another one in January. Index Universe is putting it on, so you can go to their website to get details, but it's in Boca. I think that's the only way to say Boca Raton. It's going to Boca. Taking Joellen with. It's January 11th to the 13th. A couple of people asked about that sort of thing, so if you're so inclined, go to indexuniverse.com and you can get the skinny. Have a good weekend.